Aloha, I'm Alan Tsuchiyama, professor at Culinary Community College. I teach a culinary program. A little bit about my background. I worked in all over Hawaii and in Chicago, and now I'm here at Culinary Community College, and I teach all of the programs except baking. Little bit about me. I grew up on the island of Kauai. I'm fourth generation Japanese in Hawaii, and my great grandparents came here to work in the plantations. And in the past, today tourism is our number one industry. In the past, it was sugar and pineapple, and sugar cane and pineapple were number one, number two. And as I said, my great grandparents came here. So now I'm fourth generation, and because they grew up on the plantations, and one of the dishes that they missed was having to eat sukiyaki. They had to start to use ingredients that they had around them, and they produced what we have today as Heka. And there's all different kinds of Heka, but today I'm making Chicken Hekka for you. And so that's kind of where this dish came from. And just a little bit more background that, in Hawaii, we have so many different ethnic groups that make up Hawaii. We have Japanese, Chinese, Koreans, Okinawans, Portuguese, Puerto Ricans. And during this time when they all were gathering and working in the fields, they were sharing ingredients with each other. So you're going to notice in this dish, although it has lots of Japanese background to it, you're going to see some Chinese noodles in here. So like I said, they used what they had, and the Chinese noodles were readily available. So they use that. So we're going to start now with making our Chicken Hekka. Okay, so first we're going to have our pot. So our pots that they used to use in Japan, and they used to love to use cast iron pots. So today I have one of these cast iron pots that's lined with enamel. So we're going to use this because these pots, they heat up really well. They're evenly heat distributed, and they keep the heat really well. So these are beautiful for making stews. And just about anything. So we're going to be using one of these today. If you have at home aluminum, stainless steel, you don't have a cast iron, that's fine. You just use whatever you have. It's totally fine. But I have this. So we're going to turn our pot on here. I got it on high right now, but now I'm going to turn it a little bit lower. We have ginger. So ginger is going to be the first thing with oil that we're going to be putting into the pot. When I clean ginger, I like to use a spoon. And back in the day, we don't like to waste. Great grandparents didn't like to waste. My parents, grandparents don't like to waste. So we use a spoon to clean ginger. When we clean the ginger, the skin comes off pretty easy. And as you can see, there's no meat, virtually no meat, just skin comes off. So you're using basically the 100% of your product, and that's ideal. If you have a compost at home, this skins would be perfect in your compost. And they're going to break down pretty quick because there's not a whole lot of fiber in here, in this skin. So here we have, if a little skin is on the ginger, not a problem, because it'll We just have it's in there just for flavor. So we have our ginger, and basically now we're gonna smash it. Okay, so just take our knife. If you have a mallet, if you feel this is unsafe, take a mallet and you can snap it, or even the bottom of a pot, and you can go for it. Square away on the floor. So you're gonna take a little oil, put it into your pot, get your ginger, and put your ginger in here. So if you're sauteing something, you should hear some sizzle, something happening down there. And basically what we're doing right now is we just, getting some of the flavor out of the ginger. And you want to hear it sizzling. And as you cook this, it's sweating. As you sweat, all of the juices start to come out. So that's kind of what we're getting here. Doesn't take long. In the meantime, we have our chicken. So our chicken, we cut into strips. And in the past, the chicken used to be whole chickens that they used to just chop up into chunks. So, and that's what used to go in here. When I used to have eaten chicken hekka at home, my mom used to take the chunks of chicken, skin, bone, everything, chopped it up, and put it into the pot. Beautiful stock coming out of it, beautiful flavors coming out of it. But today, because we have skinless, boneless thighs, well, we're gonna use that. It's a lot easier. And sometimes today the skin, not so healthy, bones, nobody wants to deal with it, so we go with bones, skinless, chicken thighs. Okay, so at this point, what we're doing, we don't want to, I could have put the chicken inside after we do the broth. But if I do that, then the blood comes out of the chicken, and you see bits and pieces of cooked blood that turns out into white specks, and we don't want that. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sweat my chicken. Sweating the chicken means that we're going to cook it without any color. So we're sauteing it. You can still hear it sizzling, but you don't want it to brown, because the browning is not part of this dish. Okay? So we're basically cooking the chicken, but not browning. That's kind of, in culinary terms, we say it's sweating. So we're sweating the chicken. And again, that's gonna prevent the chicken from letting out the blood and getting all speckled white in there. It doesn't look so appealing. Okay, so this doesn't take very long. So as this cooks a little bit longer, we're gonna cut our onion. So our onion that we have, we're gonna basically cut it in half. After I peeled it, cut it in half. If there's a little core, take the little core off here. I'll wipe my cutting board real quick, get some of the ginger off. Get the core off the other side. Now we're gonna cut. As we cut, so the fibers run from top to the bottom of the onion here. They go this way. If you want this onion to hold up in this pot and not melt away, you want to cut with the fiber. When you're cooking something and you want it to kind of like melt away and turn into the sauce, part of the sauce, then you cut against the fibers, and then that way it'll break off also. You just follow stir before I start cutting. Again, you can still hear it sizzling. That's good, but now I'm going to turn my heat down. And again, in the kitchen, you're in control of the heat, whatever's happening in this pot. So if it's too high, you turn it on. If it's too low, you turn it up. Okay. So basically, we're just gonna cut. So now we cut with the fibers of the onion. And we put this into the pot. And we're just gonna put this into the pot. And we're gonna cook this until the onions start to turn a little limp. Okay. Then we're gonna start with the sauce. So as this cooks, I'm gonna cut some bamboo shoots. So going back to the chicken. So this dish can be made with chicken. It can be made with beef. It can be made with pork. If you want to turn it into a vegetarian dish, then you use tofu. You can take some fried tofu and you can add it in there. If you put tofu, I would put it toward the ending of the cooking process. There's a whole lot of mixing going on. If you put it in too early, the tofu will all break apart. So do it towards the ending of the cooking process. Okay. So right now we're just working this a little bit till the onions get a little limp. Okay, we're gonna take our takenoko. So this is something that that in Hawaii back in the day, they walk into the bamboo forest and they take takenokos home and they boil them up and then they get fresh takenoko. So this is basically a bamboo shoot. So for this bamboo shoot, I went to the supermarket to get mine. And when I got this, there's two options. You buy a bamboo shoot that came from a can, or you buy a bamboo shoot that's in the refrigerated section that's vacuum sealed. That's what I got. Whatever you get your hands on, other kinds of bamboo shoot, because it doesn't have that can flavor to it. If you use the canned bamboo shoots, the best is you slice it up, or you can actually buy it sliced already, and you rinse it under water a few times. That'll get rid of kind of the canned flavor a little bit. And that's what we do at home back in the day when we didn't have this option. We only had canned or fresh, and we didn't have the fresh, so we did the canned stuff at home. Okay, so I'm gonna fry this guy up. And this is already cooked, so and it's pretty hardy. It's pretty hardy. It'll hold up under the cooking process here. Okay, so bamboo shoots. So onions are almost there. One more there. In the meantime, we're gonna take our shiitake mushrooms that I have soaking. So this I soaked in some water, some warm water. And in the warm water, I put a little bit of sugar. And I learned this when I was in the industry working in a hotel, and I was working with one of the chefs. And he said, hey, if you put a little bit of sugar in your water, it'll help it to get softer a little bit faster. So, from then on, I did it and had no problems. Because time is money in the kitchen. So this is almost done here. So I can go ahead now and I'm going to put my takenoko in. I'm going to go ahead and put my soy sauce in. I'm going to talk a little bit about soy sauce once I get this in the pot. Get some sugar. Put my sugar in. My water. Let me cut this up first. Forward. So while I'm cutting this, let's talk a little bit about the soy sauce, the shoyu that I just put in here. So there are a lot of different kinds of brands of soy sauce, and they're not all the same. Everybody has their favorite soy sauce to use at home, and I usually use Yamasa. But there's Kikkoman in Hawaii. One of our favorite soy sauces in Hawaii would be Aloha Shoyu. But there's, like I said, there's so many different kinds. But they're not all the same. Some are sweeter, some are saltier. So as you work this, the water, the soy sauce, the sugar, they all need to be adjusted depending on what brand of soy sauce you use or shoyu that you use. So that'll change a little bit. Again, recipes are guidelines, so you're not, you follow them. But if you need to change something according to your taste, please go do it. That's not only my recipe; that's most of the recipes. You go and change it to how you like it taste. You're making it, you're eating it. You might as well do it. So let's see. So as we bring this to a simmer, next we're going to add in would be our bean thread noodles. So these bean thread noodles I've been soaking now in some lukewarm water for about 20 minutes. And this is one package in Hawaii, like 7.75 ounces. And again, the bean thread noodles, if you have this brand, which is stated on the recipe, it's nice brand noodles. You can use whatever rice noodles you have available. That's fine. But it differs. So I like to use this brand because as I cook it, as I simmer it, and as I stir it, and tomorrow when I reheat the leftovers, it's still holds together. Some of the other bean thread noodles, you put it in, by the end of dinner, it starts to all break up into little pieces. Tomorrow, it's all puree. So, be careful with cooking your bean thread noodles. Some of them will break up a lot faster. If you don't have bean thread noodles and you have yam threads, so yam thread noodles will also work. You want to use a noodle that is, once you cook it, is clear, versus like a udon or a ramen noodle. When you cook it, it's not. You might be, if that's all you got, then you can go ahead and use it, but it's not going to be the same, let me tell you. So this is the bean thread noodle. And I'm just going to cut this up into like 4-inch pieces here. I'm going to add this in. Give this a stir. I love these pots. I love because they have beautiful covers that fit perfectly on these. So as I will seal this up now to let it simmer, it will simmer and not lose a whole lot of moisture, right? But not going to evaporate. If you have one that doesn't have a cover, you're going to have to add water in. Constantly be adding water to adjust. You want the water at the beginning, maybe like at least 3/4 of the cooking process. You want the water to be at the top of the broth, the soy sauce mixture at the top of your ingredients here. That's perfect. If it goes below, add some water in. The recipe that I have here is made for all of these ingredients. If you let it go too low, it'll get salty. If it's too much liquid inside, it'll be not as flavorful. So that's kind of what you want to do. So you just want to stir it every once in a while. Just keep an eye on how much liquid you have in here. Very, very, very simple. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. So now we can go ahead. It's coming to a simmer. We're going to turn this down very low. Just cover it up, just like that. Next, we're going to have the carrot. So the carrot goes in. If I put the carrots in now, this simmers for another 20 minutes, maybe sometimes 30 minutes before the noodles get soft enough where I add this in for another 10 minutes at the end of the cooking process, and the noodles will be perfect. The carrot's going to be cooked. If I put it in too early, as I stir, the carrots start to break apart, and before you know it, you get, instead of pieces this long, you're going to have pieces so small. So what we want to do is we want to add this a little bit here. And then we have green onions and watercress that go in the very last. Just before we're ready to serve, that goes in, stir it up, and you serve. So the different stages that we're going to be adding vegetables in. Don't put it all in at once. If you put it all in at once, not so good. Okay, so here we go. So we have our carrot, right? I already peeled this just to save some time. Y'all know how to peel carrot, right? So now we're going to take off the top, and we're going to cut this. So there's lots of different ways to cut a carrot. This is the easiest way. It's kind of like an Asian style, I think. But it's the easiest way. This is where my mom did it. I worked in a snack shop when I was, really young in high school, and this is the way the ladies in the snack shop did it. So I said, that's cool. I'm going to do it this way. When we go to school, we do it a little bit different. But Asian carrot stuff. There we go. So we just basically cut this at a bias on the carrot. And we're going to lay it flat. We'll shingle them if possible. So we're going to shingle this now, just like this, shingle. And we take our knife. And we go ahead and cut. Too simple, huh? So easy. Okay, just like that. Carrot's done. So that's how you do your carrots. Now, because this is going to take a while for it to cook, before I add my carrots in, I already have a pot here. That I have with the carrots in ready. So the carrots are cooked, the noodle is perfect, and it's all ready to go. Okay, so this is just a little. I can add a little bit of water to this. Like I said, I don't want to add any more soy sauce. I don't want to add any more sugar. Just add water in it. There's enough sugar and soy sauce in here for the dish. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water in here. And if you take too long to eat this, you're going to keep adding water until the cows come home. You know? So once it's done, let's have dinner. Okay. So now we're going to put in our watercress. So this is our watercress. We're so lucky that we live in Hawaii. We have natural spring water coming up that has been filtered through the mountains. It takes 25 years for the water to filter through the volcanic soil, so we can get the water coming up that's so pure, and they grow watercress here, and it's long like this one. I know I've worked in the mainland, so I've noticed that a lot of the watercress that come in the mainland, they're about this big, right? And it's okay. You're just gonna use the whole thing. Here, with the watercress that we use here, I like to just trim a little bit off the end, just a little, like 2 inches, 3 inches maybe off the end. Because usually pretty fibrous. But if you don't mind chewing a little bit, you can. But a little fibrous, so I take that off, and then I cut it into 2-inch pieces, just like this. I just turn my stove off. Sorry, guys. Okay. Chop this guy out like that, and this goes in here. At home, you might be thinking, "Oh my God, look, he's putting so much watercress in there." Don't worry, this will cook down, and it'll be perfect. Okay, so just gonna add a little bit more water in here. We'll give it a stir. Oops. You didn't see that. Oops. You didn't see that either, right? See, it's going down already, huh? Can you see that? It's already going down. Okay. So let's give this a cover. So it kind of steams in there. I'm going to turn this down just a bit. We don't want to burn the bottom. I'm going to work on my green onions. So my scallions. So the scallions next, we're just going to cut them into 2-inch pieces, just like this. This in here too. This. Stir. Oh, this smells so good. How does that look? Looks good, huh? So we got some brown, we got orange, we got some fresh greens in there. And this is just about ready. Just a little more water, just to moisten it up a bit. And we're done. So you can see that this recipe is very simple. And again, it's a play off of sukiyaki. And I don't know how many of you have had sukiyaki. Sukiyaki is usually cooked in a cast iron pot, and everything is placed all beautifully. And they go ahead and eat, and they get all the ingredients. They take it out and dip it with egg mixture, and they eat it. So this is kind of a play off of sukiyaki. No beef, chicken, and it's a one pot. So you put it in there, and now we enjoy it. Yeah, so maybe about a minute. And again, the watercress just needs to cook, and it's done. And you can see that the big amount of watercress is now in there, and it's not doesn't look that much. Okay. So white. it down first. And here you have it, chicken sukiyaki. Happy cooking. Aloha.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Mia Russell. I'm the Executive Director of the Friends of Minidoka, and I'm here in Boise, Idaho. And I just want to thank Chef Instructor Alan Tsuchiyama of the Culinary Institute of the Pacific for that wonderful demonstration video. And I know Chef Alan is watching along, so if anyone has any technical cooking questions, please ask him, and hopefully he can answer it on YouTube. But here I'm joined by Shari Tamashiro, and she's a 3.5 generation Okinawan Japanese American and is the librarian at Kapiolani Community College and also curated Looking Like the Enemy exhibit at Pearl Harbor. So welcome, Shari.
Aloha from Honolulu.
Thank you. And thank you for your camera skills with Chef Alan. That looks really good. And I know a lot of people are hoping to try to make it. And I really want to cook this one too. And, you know, because it is a one-pot recipe, it looks doable. But before we get into that, I wanted to ask you to introduce yourself more. What does a librarian do? And how did you get involved with this space with Hawaii's Nisei vets?
So I am a librarian, so that's a cyber librarian. So I have a library degree, but all my work happens online. And, you know, my focus these days has been digital storytelling, preserving our primary source materials, and then finding ways to use technology so that we can tell stories digitally across a, you know, broad spectrum. So my background is I went to college in Minnesota. So I was introduced to the Military Intelligence Service Language School, but University of Hawaii did a huge project to honor the Nisei in Hawaii, the second generation Japanese Americans. And so my team came in to tell their stories. Our college, Kapiolani Community College, has a culinary arts program. And we're really lucky that Chef Alan Tsuchiyama was willing to share this recipe. One of the things that came up constantly with the Hawaii Nisei was just stories about food. When they were training, when they were on the front lines, after the war, a lot of events happened around food. Stories revolved around food. And I really wanted to have this Chicken Hekka recipe shared. You know, what Chef Alan showed you is the product of Hawaii's plantations. He mentioned that, you know, we have Hawaiian, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Filipino, Portuguese, all different backgrounds coming together and eating together at the plantation. So you see a lot of the recipes merging and evolving where it's shared. So, you know, for this, the reason I wanted him to share this recipe is because a lot of the 442, the 100th and the 442 really missed these local dishes when they were on the front lines. And, you know, a lot of them talked about trying to recreate chicken hekka when they were in Europe. And, you know, you've heard stories where they used to cook dishes in their helmet. You know, you take out the lining, you can cook. But what the guys did was they had a system set up where one guy would carry the pot, another person would carry some of the ingredients, another person would carry like the spoon, and they would steal chickens and cabbages if they encountered it on their marches. And they would leave behind money or rations. And, you know, all the soldiers had to carry a body bag, literally a bag that they could put bodies in if it was needed. So when it wasn't in use, they would use it to stuff the live chickens and the cabbages in until they were ready to stop and they could put together their own version of chicken hekka. Obviously, they didn't have shoyu when they were on the front lines. So they took bouillon cubes and added a little bit of water to it, which kind of created like a thick, salty paste, which was a good substitute for shoyu. And, you know, I think it's one of those things where you're so far away from home, you're in such extreme circumstances. You know, what you want is the comfort of mom's cooking, grandma's cooking from home. And that's what Chicken Hekka did for the Nisei vets, the Hawaii Nisei vets, Hawaii Nisei soldiers when they were on the front lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know, I had not heard of Heka before, and I think in the comments, many people on the mainland had never heard that was another term for sukiyaki.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the description, that it is a one-pot sukiyaki, but I think someone mentioned in the comments that in the Hiroshima dialect, that Heka, Heka, is the Hiroshima ben for sukiyaki. So there's a lot of people from Hiroshima in Hawaii. Actually, my mother is Hiroshima as well. Mm-hmm. And so it suddenly got another K. So Hekka.
Got it. Well, I want to thank you for your work working with the Nisei vets and preserving those stories. They're so important for us to have moving forward. And I'm so interested to hear about, the connections to food that they've talked to you about. I know one person that was really special to you was Stanley Akita. So I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about his experience.
So Stanley Akita was a member of the 100th Infantry Battalion, and he was captured during his service, and he actually was taken to Germany and put into Stalag 7A. And Stan would talk a lot about how horrible the food was. One of the things that he told me in great detail about was sawdust bread. So, the Germans didn't have a lot of flour at the time, and they didn't want to waste what they did have on these prisoners who were in the stalags. And so they found a way to use what they called tree flour, which is really sawdust. So they created bread using sawdust, and we can post the recipe, I think. Stan talked about it a lot. He said it was heavy, it was really dark in color, it smelled bad. If you ate more than one bite every half hour, you would get constipated. So he would keep the sawdust bread in his pocket and, just take out and take a bite every half hour. I went searching and I found the recipe for him on a German site. And, we will post it, but basically it's 50% bruised rye grain, 20% sliced sugar beets, 20% tree flour or sawdust, and 10% minced leaves and straw. And, the grain had to be sufficiently rotten so that the gas will make the bread rise. The sugar beets provided the sugar to feed into the yeasty rye. And, it's, I guess one loaf was supposed to be like 3 pounds and I think black in color. Stan described it like so dense and heavy that it would be like a weapon he thought he could bash someone in the head with. And that's one thing I kind of regret, is that Stan really, really, really wanted us to try and recreate the sawdust bread recipe because he wanted me to see how bad it was. But I couldn't find sawdust that I thought was edible. So if anyone has suggestions on how sawdust bread can be recreated with safe to eat, sawdust and minced leaves and straws, that would be great to hear. So maybe I can fulfill Stan's wish, right?
It's so hard to reconcile in my mind trying to find edible sawdust, and that's the the inhumanity of wars, that was subsistence just to keep them alive. But it sounds horrible.
So, Stan talked a lot about when he was liberated. The first thing that they handed them was slices of white bread. And he just thought that was the most heavenly food he had because he'd been eating sawdust bread.
Well, we have a question from Julie Abo I'd like to bring up. This is referring back to Chicken Hekka. She says, was there mention of the Chicken Hekka in any letters or journals? Were you able to do any research to find the Chicken Hekka mentions, or was it just through the interviews with the vets?
It was through the interviews with the veterans.
I wonder what other food recollections might be there in the primary sources as well.
Well, they would try and make dried persimmons because I know that they encountered some persimmon trees while they were out marching. It didn't go very well because they didn't have time to really try. But yeah, they were constantly trying to figure out the food angles.
Mm-hmm. I have notes that you have also a 100th Club wine gang that you wanted to mention.
So
Could you tell us
Stanley
more about that?
Akita founded the wine gang at the 100th Club House. He fell in love with French wine when they were in Europe, French and Italian. And he actually developed a really kind of expensive palate. He was into the Grand Cru wine. So when he came back home, he would order cases of these fabulous wines. And he wanted the rest of the guys to enjoy wine with him. So in the 1950s, he set up a wine gang that would meet once a week at the clubhouse. But what happened is Stan would bring these really good wines, and the guys would gulp it down like it was beer. So Stan got kind of mad because they weren't enjoying and savoring the wine. So he implemented a rule that the wine couldn't be, I think, over $5. And and that way, I guess it didn't go to waste. And, the wine gang went until 2015. Jane Hirata and the rest of and Ann Kabasawa kept it running until, the last vet could stop showing up. And towards the end, it switched to beer, and it was more about just eating food and gathering. But, they never changed the price limit on the wine in all the ensuing years. So they still insisted that the wine had to be under $5. And they scolded you if it said, like I brought some wine and they thought it tasted like $10 wine, and you get scolded. But, the thing about Wine Gang was that's actually how I got really introduced and accepted by the veterans, because I would go there, bring food, bring wine. And in those talking sessions, a lot of the vets would have stories that they told to the public. They were sanitized stories. They were the humorous stories. They were the safe stories. And those were the stories that they would tell for the most part. But spending hours with them drinking under $5 wine, the real stories started to come out. And, that's where you really get to a sense of what they went through, the true stories. And, I saw Jane saying nobody drank wine. That was in the later years. Stan and I drank a lot of wine, Jane.
Well, I think they probably drank more wine earlier because they were starting with these European imports, and then, with inflation, the wine quality declined over the years.
Well, Dan had over 200 wines at his house. He had this enormous wine refrigerator. So when we wanted to drink the Grand Crus and the good ones, we would actually go over to Stan's house.
Nice. We have a note from Carol Sunahara, and she says,
"Oh, that's my auntie,
and happy to see you share your stories." So that kind of brings up, I wonder if there's any of your favorite family recipes that maybe you can tell us about in your family.
So, my father doesn't cook at all. So it's based on my mother, the Hiroshima side. My grandmother on my mom's side was an amazing cook, but she didn't have recipes and she didn't measure because she cooked it so often. And so our family always talks about grandma's beef stew and her pineapple upside down cake that was made in a skillet. And what happened was nobody has the recipe. Nobody really can recreate it exactly because it was just like, maybe you make it with grandma, but she's the driver, right? And when we had family gatherings and everyone talked about what a shame it was that nobody knew how to make this fabulous beef stew anymore, what it made us decide was that, for family food memories, we really have to make the effort to collect them and document them. So for me personally, I sat down with my mother and we typed out all of her recipes, and she was having a hard time with it because she doesn't measure for a lot of stuff. A lot of it is just, well, just take a look or when you feel. So we're trying to put together, all of her recipes. And, my mother is super famous for her energy bars. And I send it out all over to people because they absolutely fall in love with it. So, I went and I took pictures of every step so I knew what brand of peanut butter she uses, or because those make a difference, and she's going to kill me for saying this, but, half cup of peanut butter, I'm watching her and recording, And, usually you level off, right? Her half cup of peanut butter was a huge heap. So I was like, that's not half a cup, So you really have to be in the kitchen, and you have to watch as they, do the recipe, and you have to really, like I said, know the brand, know when they deviate and make these adjustments. And then you pass these recipes down, because, once grandmother's gone, mother's gone, then we won't have these recipes. It's a memory of thinking, wow, it's not quite right. What am I doing wrong? And it's too late at that point. And so I think that everybody should sit down with their elders and cook with them, at the same time, type everything out, put in their notes, videotape it if you can. And that's really important, because
Yeah.
do you have family food memories that are really strong?
Oh,
And
of
are they
course.
documented and recorded so that you're confident
yeah.
you can make them?
Yeah, there's very few that I would take on with any anticipation of it being anything close to what my grandmother makes. But I spoke about this in a previous week, but on my Mexican side, we had all of our aunties compile recipes that they remembered, family recipes. So kind of crowdsourcing between the family, and we have a cookbook that's really a treasure. And so, we have that, but like you said, it's really important to continue to do that and collect all of these recipes. And I think a lot of people identify with you that with all these chefs that have been in the kitchen for decades, they're experts. So of course they don't measure. So it's so important to sit and learn from them. And I think video is a great idea. I know that you said after creating this with Chef Alan, he was thinking it might be a good way to collect a lot of these like plantation style old school recipes that otherwise might be in danger of being lost.
And that's something, to think about, is that for us in Hawaii, we have these plantation recipes that, maybe my generation and below think, oh, that's old food. I rather have, raclettes or these just other modern contemporary food. But if we don't make chicken hekka, if we don't utilize ingredients that are considered old fashioned, like, kamaboko or fish paste, or even the bamboo shoots and things like that, will it die out? We have a third generation kamaboko factory in Honolulu.
Oh, wow.
If the demand decreases because no one knows how to use it, all they think of is, well, chop it up and put it in saimin, will this company go out of business? So how do we have these nostalgic ingredients and recipes kept alive and treasured? We're really lucky in Hawaii. We have third generation kamaboko. We have third generation tofu. So we can source some really great products, Japanese products.
Yeah, whenever I travel to Hawaii, it's like the closest thing I can get to being in Japan to get some of that really good food and really, really good fresh ingredients too. We have a couple of questions.
Sorry.
Well, Carrie Nakagawa asks if we can have your bachan energy bar recipe, if that's a family.
Yeah, I'm hoping my mom is not watching this, but yeah, I'll post it.
Great. And then a question from Keone Young. Did they ever pour oshiro over rice at the end of eating heka? Is there any specific way to eat the heka?
When we did a test run, we ate it over rice. Chef Alan maybe can chime in with how he ate it with his mom's one, but I've eaten it plain. I've added in tofu. I eat it over rice. I don't think that, maybe Chef Alan can correct me if I'm wrong, but for when I make dashi or oden, you do zosui. You cook the rice in the broth so it absorbs it. I personally think that the heka broth is a little too strong for that. If you noticed, it's shoyu, sugar, water. I don't think it has the complexities of dashi. So I would know. And we actually went back. Chef Alan went back and adjusted the recipe to include less sugar and shoyu. And he did make the comment that if you want to decrease the sweetness of it, you will. So if you decrease the sugar, you're going to have to decrease the amount of shoyu, because it's the salt and sugar has to balance. So this chef who trained in Japan made a comment about Hawaii Japanese food. He said it's very different from food you'll find in Japan, because we have a tendency to be a little heavier handed with the shoyu and the sugar. So that's one difference to be aware of if you're making this dish, is we tend to really like the shoyu sugar combination very strongly.
Yeah. Okay, bringing it back to the vets, can you tell us any more kind of food-related stories with the vets? I know, similar to the camps, the mutton, there was a lot of strong opinions about mutton. And how else were they able to find things like rice and anything else?
So the guys hated the rations, especially Albert Arakawa, who was chef. He was the cook for 1399. He just talked about there was a revolt when he tried to serve them mutton. And he actually came up with something really clever. He knew that the guys would have regular poker matches in the evenings all the time. So he would put together all of these snack packages. And for those of you in Hawaii, Shiro's, so Shiro from Shiro Simon, which is a really famous restaurant chain in Hawaii, he was actually dispatched to go all over camp to all of the poker games and sell these snacks that Albert put together using, the leftovers. And with the money that they raised from that, Albert could buy rice, he could buy shoyu, he could buy, pickled stuff, and he could make food that the guys would actually eat. Some of the chefs would start, or the cooks would start asking for the Filipino ration. So that one actually had food that was more in tune with what the Hawaii guys wanted to eat. One of the things I forgot to mention about when Stan Akita was in Stalag 7A, I never knew this, and I thought it was really interesting. He talked about how they would get Red Cross packages, and the box would have canned items and other, like I think chocolate and other things. And what was so fascinating was that Stan said that before they got the boxes, the Germans would pierce the tin can, the canned goods. And they did that because it would force them to eat the food, quickly before it spoils. If they didn't do that, then the prisoners could hoard the cans. And, Stan said it was easy to escape. It was very hard to survive outside of it. So the cans were pierced so that they couldn't stockpile and escape and, still be able to eat. And I thought, wow, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned the Red Cross, and I believe the Red Cross had a role in the WWII camps on the mainland as well, in sort of working as a go-between. And so there was a time where the incarcerates had to actually petition to be able to have shoyu at camp. And I believe that during the war, the WRA was the largest purchaser of rice in the U.S. government. So it's interesting to think about all these food threads with the war.
Right. I just think that with all of this, food is something that connects all of us. And actually, there's a story that I thought was funny, is when the 442 was at Camp Shelby, one of the chaplains, Yamada, I was reading one of his letters, and he was complaining so much about how much birthday cake he had to eat. So what was happening is that when a soldier who was training at Camp Shelby had a birthday, their family would wire money over to Chaplain Yamada, and he would take the money and buy a birthday cake and go over and, wish them happy birthday and have cake with them. He had to do that for every soldier who had a birthday. And so he was constantly eating birthday cake. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a different kind of problem, right?
Yeah, I don't know that anyone else would identify with that problem during those times.
And, there's stories of, I think the guys over at Camp Shelby hunting pigs because they wanted to have Hawaiian food, where you dig a pig, the emu, and then you can make kalua pig. You can roast the pig underground. There were stories where, local farmers were really upset because the guys maybe had strayed into areas they shouldn't have taken the pig from. So, it seems like a theme where the guys just always really thought constantly about food.
All right, we've got a comment from Clement going back to your energy bars, since you're a videographer, maybe another project for you down the line will be to make a video with the energy bars.
I'm gonna have to get approval from my mom, but I do have, her recipe with photos that document each step. I think she'll be more comfortable with that.
Okay, stay tuned, Clement. We'll work on that for a future project.
Or Clement can be really, really nice to Pam Funai and can send that link through Pam.
Okay. We have another question from Kioni Young. Was Arakawa Okinawan? They love yagi there.
He was. And I've actually had yagi sashimi, goat sashimi.
Oh.
That is a food that I don't think I will try again.
Yeah, I don't know that I would want to try that.
There's actually an amazing story called Pigs from the Sea. And what happened is in Okinawa, pigs are a major part of the industry. Okinawans eat every part of the pig. They eat them raw. They pickle the ears. They eat the balls. That one I will never try. But what happened was, because of the Battle of Okinawa, the pig population was almost completely wiped out. And there were a lot of Hawaii Okinawans who were serving in the military intelligence service in Okinawa, and they were writing letters home that was being published in the newspaper about how bad the situation was in Okinawa. And so in Hawaii, the Okinawan community just went into a frenzy to send over food, clothing, money, school supplies, medical supplies. And a group who was actually a cousin of mine, he wanted to put Okinawans back on their feet, not just completely reliant. And so he came up with the idea of sending pigs over. So, like in, I think the late 40s, early 50s, the Hawaii Okinawan community raised $50,000. That's almost like $500,000 today. Mm-hmm. So they said $50 gets one pig. So families would band together and sacrifice and try and raise the money. A veterinarian was sent over to Omaha, Nebraska, and he selected 550 Chester white pigs. So these were giant pigs with white skin and a high body fat content that they researched would work well in the Okinawan Okinawan climate and with their diet. And the pigs were put on a train to Oregon, put on a U.S. Transport ship, the USS Owen, and 7 men from Hawaii were sent over to be the pig brigade to keep the pigs alive. And there were problems, 2 days out, a storm hits, wipes out all the sheds. They have to go back. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers rebuilds the sheds to withstand storms. Halfway through their voyage, they're encountering mines still in the water that they can only pray they'll avoid at night. But 1 month later, they steam into White Beach in Okinawa, and the pigs are distributed by lottery across Okinawa to different farmers. And Hawaii Okinawans had one request: when these pigs have babies, pass on a pair. And within 4 years, Okinawa is back to the pre-war numbers of their pig population.
Wow.
So Okinawans today still talk about this life-saving gift of aloha that came from Hawaii, these pigs from the sea. But, what I wanted to share was it's tied into a value that Okinawans have called Yui Maru, Yuimaaru. Yui Maru means communities support one another, especially in times of need. And this is what we're taught growing up, we always help each other. And I love the pig story because this is an amazing story of, what this community can do. Because if I came to you today and said, let's raise $500,000 and let's have pigs from Nebraska sent to Okinawa, I think you would think I was crazy. But they just forged ahead, and because it was needed. And they knew how much these pigs would mean to the diet. And it was so successful that a group later sent over goats. The idea had been the goats' milk would be good for babies and young children, but Okinawans like to eat the goats. So that worked out kind of differently than they anticipated. And yeah, someone made a comment about the derogatory term. A lot of Okinawans raise pigs in Hawaii, and they were looked down upon by the Japanese and taunted for smelling like pigs, eating pigs. And so there is a very strong distinction between Japanese and Okinawan because of the harassment and the discrimination that happened. And I'm 3.5 because, you know, Okinawans didn't come into Hawaii until 1900. I mean, they came much later than the Japanese. And so, you know, the half is because the generations are kind of skewed if there was a Japanese married to an Okinawan.
I'm so glad we were able to get into that part of your heritage as well. And that's, you know, really wonderful community stories there. I think it's so incredible to think about diaspora in that way, with supporting each other, even though, you know, during the war it would have been maybe looked, I don't know, suspicious, but it's really cool to see, you know, supporting the motherland afterwards. It reminds me of the tsunami relief efforts by the Japanese American community here.
Yeah. And my current project actually is documenting the Okinawan-owned restaurants in Hawaii. And, you know, we currently have identified over 350. Because in the same Yuimaru concept, when someone opened the restaurant, they would take in, you know, people from their village and help them open up their own restaurants. So one village had 75 restaurants just because of one guy opening up American Cafe. And, you know, for Hawaii people, these are major ones like Wisteria, Columbia Inn, Zippy's, Times Grill, which became Times Supermarket. Okinawans have a very big stamp in Hawaii's food scene.
Well, I look forward to hearing more about that and to all your work ahead. That flew by, but we are out of time. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you again to Chef Alan and to Shari for your time today.